Welcome to Retro Scale Modelling. This is part 2 of Airifx's Tiger 1, scale 1 to 72. In part 1, I painted the tracks, built up the hull and made a start on the turret. In part 2, I'll be finishing off the kit, so I'll be carrying on with the build, painting and decals. So let's get into this. So starting where I left off, as you can see, I'm just about to put the top covering on. The narrow part is the actual back part of the turret, so placing the front area towards the gun mount first before clicking it into position. Then once that's in position, there's a little lip here on the underside for the back piece to go on, and that just butts up against it. It fits perfectly, you shouldn't have any problem with it. Next to go on is 3 hatches, well 2 hatches and 1 viewport. The bigger one goes down the side and there's a large recess area for that to fit into, while the top smaller one just fits on top, and the viewport as well. The viewport is tiny, so just be careful with that. You can very easily lose it as you pick it up. Next is the barrel. You have to assemble the tip first. It's just 2 halves together before placing the actual barrel inside the mount. It just pushes in. You don't really have to put any cement in there if you don't want to. I did, but it's entirely your choice. Next are the wheels and tracks. Now, depending on what you've decided to build, whether you use the preform tracks or doing what I'm decided to do and build them up yourselves. So the preform track is just a simple case attaching it to the hull after painting, but obviously the other side you have to build. There's a series of wheels that have to go on top of each other. The Tiger tank has lots and lots of wheels on it, more than I actually thought. There's a lot. You have to make up the idle and drive wheel first. Make sure they're lined up properly. There's location plates on each drive wheel, which will go onto the main unit. This is essential that you get these lined up properly, because they fit in to the main rack of wheels that you see there once they're together. So the wheels are made up, and I'm just placing the 2 racks together. When I say the wheels are made up, only the ideal wheel at this point. So just place the 2 main wheel parts together before placing in the ideal wheel and drive wheel. This is where it's important. There's a tiny little recess point for the wheel to fit in. I've just taken it off there to show you, to see whether it was easier to build it without the 2 parts getting sandwiched together first. It'll be up to you, your choice, whether you find this easier or not. I actually found it easier putting the 2 main wheel parts together before placing in the idle and drive wheel. It just seemed to fit better. So now that those 2 wheels are in, it's time to actually build up the rest of the wheels, and these just simply get pushed in to the recess holes which are there. There's actually only 4 of these that you place into. They shouldn't give you any trouble. You don't have to open up the holes or so forth. They'll just place in. You can add a little bit of cement if you want. These wheels are not free moving, so you don't have that option anyway. So that's the wheel run built up. I'm just adding a little bit of cement there to the last one to make sure it holds. Pay particular attention again to the ideal wheel and drive wheel, especially the ideal wheel. That's got to be in such a position for the track to fit. Don't wait until it's completely dry. As you can see there, the track, there's not so many pieces of it, but if you don't get that idle wheel in the proper position, the track won't close up. So follow the instructions, put the two larger pieces on first. They should go central to the main track line, and then once it's on, just follow the instructions for each link that goes on in sequence. And the sequence is important as well, because obviously they curve around the idle and drive wheels, so you want to get the sequence correct, or again you'll find it difficult for the track to close. So that's both tracks on. Where I'm pointing out here is the idle wheel. You can see the angle where it is there. I actually had the angle a little bit too shallow. This is why I found out, that the track didn't fit. But by just moving the angle slightly, then the track fits. And when it comes to attaching them to the main tank, they only go on a certain way. So just play around with it. Don't get confused when you put them on. Dry fit, obviously. This is what I'm doing here, just to make sure I know exactly the position that they're going on to. Once you're happy with the position, they simply just push onto the axles. They fit really easily. They don't need any pressure, so you won't have a problem with the axles breaking, and you just push them on. So it's time to start painting the camo. I'm using 86 light olive here by Umbro. So I'm putting on sort of the greenish colour first. Now, when you're painting in these stripes, what I can gather is there's about 4, possibly 5 different patterns you can go for. Now, it all depends, like with everything in model making, up to the user, up to the builder, how they decide to do it. Don't be put off with people's suggestion you should only do it this way or that way. It's entirely up to you. Do what feels right, as long as you get a close approximation how it looks. I personally don't see what the problem is. So what I'm doing here is I'm just painting in the stripes in a random pattern, but sort of following the instructions as well. So I know basically where the green is meant to go, not necessarily in the fashion that it's shown on the stencil sheet. And the next colour is Umbro 160 German Camouflage Red Brown, and these are for the darker stripes. So I'm just applying it the same as the light olive. Now, as well, I should have mentioned, I find it easier to do the camo patterns with the turrets off for the main hull, but when I'm doing the turret, I'll put the turret back on just to line it up with the turret. I also paint the camo lines right up to the connection hole, the reassess point where the turret sits, so there's no any tiny little gaps that you missed out. You don't see that point anyway, so yeah, it looks strange when the turret's off. So it looks like all the paint markings are getting thrown into a big gaping hole, but you don't see that anyway once the turret's on. So it just helps with the lining up of the camo onto the turret. So now the camo's painted and on, and you can see what I mean by the paint running into the hole. It's time now to place on all the cables and extra track links that we drill holes for. Now, I always put these on at the end because you don't want them on before you paint, obviously, because you have to paint around them. So you may as well put them on at last once your camo's painted. And they simply just fit into the little drill points that you've already made up when you started the build. They shouldn't cause you any problems. And next to go on is the extra track length. So there's 2 on one side and 4, 5 on the other side. Again, it depends whether you've decided to put these on or not, but they should fit into the little drill holes that you already made up. So just a little bit cement. I tend to put a bit of cement not only in the drill point holes, the recess holes there. I also put it along the track as well, just so it's more of a secure fin, because these are the bits that you ultimately pick up, touch when you're picking up the tank. So you want them to be very secure. And once it's done, all that's left then is to fit the turret. Always just check on your alignment first, obviously, to make sure that everything's in place how you want it. Try and make sure everything's dry before you put the turret back on again, because you don't want to knock anything off. So it's time to put the decals on now. As you can see, I've sped up the process. The decals are fairly nicely represented here. They could be a little bit thick, but a good decal agent will help out with that. So they are going on the normal way, softening up in some warm water, and then I'm putting a decal solution on the model itself before actually placing on the decal. Well, this is going to bring the build to an end. It was a nice little tank to build for Airifx. This is the newer model. The tracks were a bit of a pain, if I'm honest. Maybe I should have went for the preform ones and just dealt with the more difficult paint job. I don't know, I may have to get another one out and try it and see how I feel about it. But overall, it's a very good kit to do. Anyone can build this kit, given the choice of the instructions give you. Apart from the tracks, it's not too technical, but it's a good kit to sink your teeth into if you haven't built an armoured vehicle like a tank before. So if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the rest of the channel for my builds. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll be alerted to all my future updates and builds. Hit that like button, and of course you can leave a comment. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.